Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Ahead of the Curve. Today, we have a very special episode for you. This is the very first time we've ever done a panel discussion online and live. So just like every other show that we do, we want you to engage as the audience, as the viewers. These are your friends as well as ours. So please feel free to engage. Feel free to ask questions as well. We've got some really great speakers that are here with us, and guests that are here with us today. So please feel free to engage, and we hope that you guys enjoy the show. So I'd like to introduce our guests. We have Berto Mora from All of It Now with us today. We have Vincent Steenhoek from Evoke Studios. Vincent, I hope I got the pronunciation of your last name right.
Yeah, very well done.
We've got Cory FitzGerald from Silent House and XR Studios Live, and we've got Tamlyn Wright from Silent House. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Hello. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
So, Berto, would you mind giving us a little bit of a background just to let everybody kind of know who you are? A little bit of your background would be really, really helpful for the viewers.
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Berto Mora. Some of you guys may have seen some of our work online. But a little bit of my background, I moved to San Francisco in 2008. I'm currently based out of San Francisco, but also living in LA. And I studied film and motion graphics. And at the same time, I was, working in a lot of match moving, camera tracking technology, but at the CG side. This is something that I've always wanted to learn. Eventually, I started video editing for a lot of publishing companies in San Francisco. Got really tired of that, then started hardware programming and did a little bit of computer science. So at the time when I did that, I was actually building my own tracking IR systems. And I quickly figured out that I much rather use someone else's technology than me build it myself. So after all that experience, I found an amazing company, All of It Now, that I am a partner with now. And we started with, as VJs with real-time shaders. And from there, we eventually got more into the real-time realm of content creation. Tracking has always been something that I've been a part of, and that's been a part of, all the work that I've done, whether it was connect tracking, blob tracking, things like that. And eventually now we're doing XR, which is the reason why we are here. So that's a little bit of background of myself. There's a lot more, but I'll end it with that.
Thanks, Berto. Tamlyn, how about yourself, seeing as you're kind of the next one over, the neighbor of Berto?
Yes. Where am I in the block? My name is Tamlyn Wright. I'm a partner at Silent House. And I operate in the space of production design for broadcasts or any live venues production that you will have an audience in. I started my work in theater and costume and set design, and then quickly moved into production design and stayed within the realm of whether it be theater, circus, theme parks, broadcasts, music specials, and now more in the realm of music specials and working with artists on their world tours. Also in the course of that has also been corporate development and working with corporations on their presentations. We're also using our technologies for their benefit as well. So I'm working currently with different gaming environmental corporations that are putting on shows in a 3D space. So that's kind of another avenue we've found ourselves in. So.
And Tamlyn, what else? You mentioned earlier that you've also been working kind of on the side or off to the side on another project. Would you mind giving us a little? Yes,
actually, at the forefront of all this, part of why the AR and the XR worlds are so heightened at the moment is obviously the lack of being able to get 100 people in a room to be able to put on a show. So, part of unlocking our business is really crafting the key to do that. And the people that we all know and love that we work with are the people that can do that. We're working currently at Entertainment Industry Response with Dr. Stu Weiss, and we're unlocking the industry in a way that we've been across 25 shows and bringing them back in a safe way with medical advisement and staff and crew that are specially trained to deal with the COVID situations at hand, and putting COVID compliance officers in hand with disinfecting and also now testing to where we're able to keep a exceptionally safe space for productions to be able to come back, whether it be XR or larger productions. So it's been exciting to get 200 or 300 people in one space to be able to actually put on a show again, which is kind of groundbreaking. So there's, we're just one step away, I feel, from being able to put a band on stage for a small audience, which is great. Which is where we.
That is fantastic. Like that actually is really wonderful, because it really kind of helps breathe life back into the industry that we hold dear to our hearts, the one that we're struggling right now to keep up and growing, and get those live events back and get people back where they should be.
100%.
Cory, how about yourself?
Well, I am Cory FitzGerald. I'm also a partner in Silent House, as well as in XR Studios. But my background is coming from also the theater. I come from a sort of tech, lighting, programming background, starting when I was real young, and then going into R&D for consoles with high-end systems and Whole Hog and Flying Pig and Catalyst development and a bunch of stuff on that original R&D side, and sort of on the forefront of using lighting consoles to control video and running hypnotizers and Green Hippo, various different things and all kinds of M boxes. And then getting into design and programming for concert touring, where I kind of ended up for the last 15 years or more. So it's been a bit of a journey. Started doing my own design work, started getting my own clients and putting shows together for live events, broadcast, TV, award show appearances, that kind of stuff. And then getting into more producing of that. So getting into control, sort of as you design a show, budgeting it, dealing with the vendor, dealing with stuff, and then eventually sort of being into more creative directing, creative producing, on helping other people sort of build shows that they like, and sort of running budgets and running the overall components of that. So I think it's kind of a natural transition as we got into the XR world and the non-audience pandemic, pre-post current pandemic, whatever it's going to be, situation of using the technology that people have been working with and developing, and sort of building a way to apply that to shows in a way that, in a model that made sense before and after, hopefully. So kind of helping budget things, dealing with schedules, dealing with anticipating problems, anticipating tech problems and personnel problems and all kinds of stuff. So using that kind of creative design, direction, and producing model to sort of help the artists and the technicians and the scientists put all this together and make it a usable show, as opposed to just we can do this, but we can't do it in 24 hours. So we've been dealing with a lot of questions, and we can talk more about it later, I'm sure. But just how do you monetize this, and how does it make sense, and how do you bring the costs down, and all the things that are really complicated with it, because it's a whole new world of bleeding edge technology, as we've been talking about. So anyway, that's where we're at now.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, the workspaces and the places that we have explored over the course of the last 7 months have been absolutely insane. I mean, being able to pull together, say, the panel, just for example, today is just incredible. Talking about extended reality and extended reality workflows and augmented reality, and bringing all that to life is pretty darn exciting. So Vincent, how about yourself? Can you give us a little bit of background about where you're from and where you are right now?
Sure. So I'm from the Netherlands. I live in London. I'm currently in Hilversum in one of the television studios to work on an AR production. I have a background in theater. Studied lighting design in London. Moved there about almost 10 years ago now. I got really infatuated with media servers and projection mapping and kind of tracking technologies, and ended up spending some months with Green Hippo, going down the manufacturer route, because I thought that would be an interesting side of the industry to see after touring. Yeah, well, there we go. So it has a sort of grasp for sure. So from there I joined Disguise as their first QA and support guy in 2014, and I stayed there just over 4 years. Traveled the world, did really all kinds of great fun shows, meeting all kinds of great fun people, and then I freelanced for a while, running all kinds of mostly D3 based shows, or Disguise. And then late last year, together with two friends, founded Evoke Studios. And I still find it hard to tell you where we're based. I'm based in London, but my partners are based in Latvia and Spain. Our producer is in Berlin, and we work with people from everywhere. So we are kind of naturally socially distant, if you will. But we still need to find our way into the same room sometimes to actually put a show together, like we're doing right now. Yeah.
You touched on something that's really interesting, is just the sheer fact that even with these new workflows, we can now basically easily work remotely in a lot of cases and be able, I know, Berto, you've done some experimenting kind of earlier on with using VPNs and setting up VPNs to negate different types of protocol traffic and things within the systems to be able to control them, say from a lighting desk across seas and that kind of thing. So I think that's a really interesting kind of outcome of what's kind of happened over the course of the last several months, and have forced us to kind of change some of the workflows and the ways that we work right now. So I wanted to kind of dive in a little bit as well into why we're here today, speaking about extended reality and extended reality workflows. I think one of my first questions I kind of want to pose to Berto, which would be, right now, what are your general thoughts about where we are sitting inside of an extended reality world? And what are your thoughts about, the present state of virtual production?
Yeah, I think, virtual production is, very much in its infancy. As we are working on different projects today, we are all being a part of the development of that future of the technology. A lot of the technology that we use today for XR, the thing about all this is like the technology has already existed. But what we're doing here is we're creating a solution, and we're finding bits and pieces of different types of technologies, putting them together and creating this new coin term that people are calling XR, which is extended reality. But I think the future, the future of this is if we keep, using it, keep, pushing the hardware manufacturers and our clients to use the technology. I believe that, it's definitely going to grow. I'm not sure if it's going to, when live events come back, if it's still going to be a thing, or who's going to be the key users of the technology. Eventually, I think the technology will probably end up mostly in film productions, because it has opened up a lot of real-time capabilities for the film world, where in the past they have done, they shoot the piece, send it off to a different country, and they wait months to get that result back. So I think that's kind of an idea of where it's going to go. And, eventually my biggest dream is, having AI or, deep learning to enhance everything that we're doing and make it even better. The possibilities are very endless of what, virtual production can offer to a lot of different industries here. Yeah,
absolutely. Tamlyn, what are your thoughts about the whole kind of virtual production scene now? How do you think it's going to fit in with what might come, say, a year down the road, when there might be a vaccine or some sort of way to alleviate the effects of COVID?
Well, I still think we're in the midst of kind of the usage and the deep dive of it. And I think, from the standpoint of saying a year from now, I think where we hope we'd be today is not where we thought we'd be when it was May. Let's start with that. COVID time has its own way of pushing fast forward through a tar walking experience. So it's a strange fast forward and rewind throughout this whole timeline. But nonetheless, what I see, at least for now, is the XR solution is fantastic in the space of in the broadcast and streaming worlds, of recrafting some of the existing shows from the broadcast perspective, whether it be the Emmys or the AMAs or the CMTs. It's, the different shows that are out there at the moment. And also then heightening and being able to lean into them for a lot of the programs that are out there, like Masked Singer and some of those that are leaning into that technology. It does come at a price point that a lot of people, I think, that we're going to jump in to it maybe backed away, and knowing that to pull off a quality show of any caliber does take a budget, and that diving into XR doesn't negate that fact. And I think that the learning curve of the work process, the workflow, I should say, from the production design side all the way through to delivering it to camera is a new process for not only like from the guild side, from the television and film production side, like for The Mandalorian is a good example of that, all the way back over to the music video side and the virtual spaces that can be made for those spaces and those different scales of events and shows that artists want to lean into. I would say that it's really been amazing to see the ramp up in the exploration, the creativity that's just blossomed so quickly in this short amount of space. In time, it kind of concentrated everybody's energies and interests and instincts into this space of XR. But obviously, without the buildup of fantastic 3D graphics in the past 5 to 10 years has been, from my side, where my worlds come together in the kind of intersection of technology and architecture, in providing and working screens into my designs for the past, or a lot of people do this, but like working your screens into and screen surfaces into designs for the past 20 years. There's been markers along the line that have taken us to a space where when watching the broadcast, you're like, is that a real set? Is that a real space? And as a viewer, you're questioning what you're watching and trying to understand what that reality is. And we've exceeded and hit those marks along the way prior to this pandemic and being in the space of having to lean into XR. So we were ramping up to this, but then it hit fast forward, obviously, in this space. So I think that we've seen, like, there was an Emmy Awards that I did a few years back where there was a really amazing amount of 3D content that gave this feeling of it being in an AR space where we really didn't do that. It was just amazing content that was crafted for that. And then, like last year, there's several shows that have done this, but taking AR technology into the space of the VMAs and some of the shows that are out there that have been able to support those visions from the artists' camps that have then the ability to go beyond than just what's out there for the artists on stage and to emphasize and then explore what it is to take things on beyond the sky or beyond the screen size to the sky and to over the audience and to give it that space. I think that a year from now, where I'm seeing things changing for me is it's about how many audience will be in the space. Right now I'm on a production that it's integrating AR into a design space of a real, in an arena with only like 200 people. There'll be 100 people in the chorus and then 100 people in the audience. And it's for a Chinese video game anniversary broadcast. So it's a very unusual space to be in when there's different kind of boxes to tick from the client side of here's our what we want. We want to have a live orchestra. We want to have some performances on stage, and there's going to be 100 people in the audience. It's only 100 people. And then what are we doing with the rest of that space? And those are then you're answering questions of not only the art, expanding the architecture and the environment that's suitable to your client, but then also what are you doing with this new space that you found that's filling where the audience was when they're watching from a different portal.
Yeah, that's definitely been a very big topic of conversation over the course of the last few months, is that whole audience participation part and just actually filling the physical space of where an audience would be and being able to feedback the reactions, because we're all human, right? We all absorb energy and we all react on those energies in different ways. And when you take that energy away, how do you react to that? How's that?
You're missing the heartbeat in the audience. And right now, like we just wrapped actually a show called The Big Show. It'll be coming up like in December or something. And it's and we're in an arena in Macon, Georgia, doing over the top massive stunts that take an entire arena to fill, like monster truck pulls or like giant cars flying over different things through fire. And like it's an amazing circus of craziness, and then there's no audience. And so in this instance, we've literally like put pixels through the entire seating just to give a heartbeat and a beat and a pulse and to visually fill the void. And different shows are sweetening it with laughter and cheers. We actually had a parking lot that we had filled with drive-in style with people watching from the parking lot, and then we fed that into the room as the response. And so everyone's kind of coming at it with different solutions, and in the meantime, until we start to find the comfort level of coming back into the space of having, pods of people or groups of people or a dispersed audience.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing how everything is just changing and evolving so quickly. Yeah. And speaking of evolution, Cory, coming from a background of basically lighting and moving your way into producing for extended reality, what have been some of the challenges that you've had in that transition?
I think, and I think this will maybe talk to some of the questions that have been popping up, but I think, knowing a lot about shows, production design, creative design, whatever, and working with artists that, how that interaction goes, how that timeline usually works. It's been a sort of, we've been trying to frame it in a natural progression of this is a new tool, this is a new, format to go on, but we're using existing technology, we're using existing cameras, broadcast, potential, taking a lot of the leaps forward that have been happening, as Berto was saying, with film and like virtual production, creating sets with content basically. But now I think trying to focus this back into the live or, live to tape environments, because that's what we're now missing. That we can do films, they've been doing that for a while. They started a long time ago with different aspects of that, but now it's like, well, how do we do a live concert or a comedy special or a award show or whatever the case is going to be? So from our perspective of anticipating those problems, those needs, those timelines, the changes, the development of those ideas in the timeline that we'd expect for a real show. A film or a TV show might have weeks or months to prepare, and then weeks or months of post. We have days to weeks of prep, and then nothing, and then it's the show and it's done, and we move on to the next one. So I think our viewpoint has been, how do we take this amazing technology that a lot of people have put a lot of time in to kind of make work, and then like ram it through the meat grinder and do a real show in 5 days with it? And it's very hard. Like, it's very difficult. It doesn't want to work that way. It's not built to change that quickly. Oops, maybe I dropped out. But the the whole point is to take those lessons we've learned, take the technology we know, we have the output we know, we know how to stream, we know how to capture a live show or a live concert, we know the kind of cameras and the formats we need, we know the kind of infrastructure that goes on both ends, and now we've got this new medium in the middle to kind of put it through and get it out to the other side. So I think one of the questions had something to do with expectations and dealing with clients. Like, that is everything for what I feel like I've been doing for months, is like, what is the rehearsal time going to look like? What do we need the camera block? How much time is it going to take to do that? Or what if we want to change the color? What if we want to change the background? What if we want 5 backgrounds instead of 3? Well, that's not in your budget, or that's not in your time scale. I think it's seeing that bigger picture and knowing how all the little pieces work enough to sort of, think that through and explain it to someone and say, this is what you want to do, and here are the 5 technological options we can do now. Like, we're not going to have an audience, we're not going to have this. There is like, this is what the shape of the world could look like now, and how do you want to do it? And here are the sort of theoretical price points, and now let's start attacking. This is the one that fits within the budget. Now let's start moving forward with this one. But a lot of these conversations, I think, have been moved. As Tamlyn was saying, everything has been moved from a timeline of, a 6-month prep time for a tour. Well, now we might be able to schedule a show next week. So what can we do in that kind of time frame? And that goes back to things we did before the pandemic. Of something pops up, we're doing an award show this weekend or next month, or we're going on a late night show. At some point this week. Like, how do we get stuff going? And I think a lot of people are embracing this AR, XR, VR, whatever versions that are making sense. Green screen, not green screen, LED screen workflow. No screen, no green screen workflow, just AR workflow. Like, there's a ton of options. So it's more about like, what is right for the client and the show and the product, or what is possible in the time that we have or the budget we have. And that's where I found myself. It's sort of like it evolved naturally. I didn't really think to myself, this is what I'm going to go out and do. It just sort of like, between our clients asking us for options and us getting into the technology and saying, how can we help do this, and work with different teams and vendors and whatever, it sort of naturally evolved as it just sort of as a continuation of the creative producing bridge that we have been working on for a while, of how do we come in and do what the artist wants at Coachella. That's 6 months worth of work. and how do we come in and do the Katy Perry American Idol thing or the VMAs or whatever. Like, that's a lot of work to kind of get that thing, and then they can figure out what they want to do on that platform. It's more about the bigger picture of how do we get it to work together.
There's no business like show business.
That's right.
And Vincent, how about some of the technical challenges that you've been experiencing in the transition from going from live production into producing for AR or producing into extended reality? What have been some of the kind of the bigger stumbling blocks or challenges that you've had running along the ways technology-wise?
So I think the lack of sleep is still very much there. I'm on a hefty 2-hour sleep right now, so that's definitely still there. I think that the thing that you have to make clients aware of, or the thing that they don't understand so well or appreciate, is that it's virtual, so therefore it must be quick. We're not doing physical things anymore, so therefore surely we can just change anything. And it doesn't work like that. We've recently, what we found really helped us is that we developed rate cards in which we kind of describe, well, you can have this level of effect, you can have this level of finish, you can have a basic scene which is light baking, but it doesn't have any, dynamics, if you will. You can have this level of variations, and it will cost you this much money to have this many variations. And that way we can kind of block out the workload and also make sure that we can fit the budget, because there's a lot of, sticker shock when it comes to XR. It's expensive. And I think like the creative work can actually, relatively speaking, be made affordable depending on the needs. But then there's always the technical requirements and the large volumes of LED that are needed that will just cost a lot of money. So we see a lot of conversation also surrounding green screen and how that can be the alternative, or a combination of the two to lead to more kind of competitively priced productions, which makes a lot of sense because, no economy is doing well right now, so everyone cares about that. I think the challenges right now are the fact that for a lot of people, this is new. Most people haven't done this 100 times over. They haven't tried every trick in the book yet. And, like Berto says, he likes being perpetually in beta. Well, everyone is pretty much in beta when it comes to this.
We are in beta.
But that makes it, you have to be very diligent with the risks that you take, I think. And I think XR is very exciting. Like we can design in ways that we couldn't in before, and you can make worlds that you couldn't deliver before in timeframes that you couldn't deliver them in either. And it's very enabling. And it's let me see. Someone in the comments was saying about it's an acceleration, not a pivot. And I think for companies like ours, that's completely true. But I think for our clients, it is definitely a pivot. They have to have a way of keep on delivering whatever is new for their audience. They need to keep selling, and they need to pivot towards this technology and this way of delivering. And frankly, just companies like all of ours that know how to enable that for them. And I think the challenge, also what Shannon is saying is, how do you make people understand what is possible with XR? Like we haven't done a ton of productions in XR yet, but what we have noticed is like if the person is in the space, they get it. But a lot of people really still think in kind of 2D, and then we have to make that translation into volumetric space for them. And for us, that's easy, but still having to translate that and making that visible, that can be a challenge, I think, currently for sure. And, it's not always so obvious what people want either. And I think right now, everyone is still growing their portfolio. So also having workable examples right now is also still, it can be a challenge. Or you'd have to kind of take an existing thing that someone has done and you go, well, if you want something like this, whereas in other formats of media, you may have already done it a bunch of times at a certain scale that everybody else finds super impressive, you know? So I also think that, like, we're very new on the block, you know? I think that for XR, if I look around us, it doesn't feel like the competition is very wide, but it's super steep, you know? And everyone is trying to do this, so you can't fail. I mean, you can't fail in what we do anyway, but with this, everyone looks at what you do, and you. I think there is actually a pressure from the community that you do this well, versus just that you need to deliver for your clients, which you have to do anyway. Other than that, it's still just production, you know, like for me, whether we work in D3 here or it's for a live event, that's no different. But I think that, like, the kinds of thoughts that have kept me busy is, but what is it that you take home from a live experience? What is that thing? And how do you transport that? And what do you take away from that? And how do you put that into a virtual production? How do you connect those people? You know, that's what that is. How do I get that feeling of a big kick of a bass drum in my chest? How do you get that? I mean, we can all put a ton of, you know, kind of webcam streams into some virtual space, but are you really together? You know, and I think that's where this technology has a lot to explore, and I think all of us are trying to do that, and that's just really exciting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sorry, Tamlyn, did you want to?
No, I think he touched on the fact that, like, we've all probably been operating at a bar that's quite high, you know, prior in our pre-pandemic lives or even pre-XR lives. And I think stepping into the technology, the last thing we want to do is lower that bar. And so as we see us, you know, all dipping our toe in and taking on different aspects of it, I think keeping the bar high is obviously the only way to go. And it unfortunately comes at a cost, or the other side of that is it just looks amateurish because the audience is sophisticated. And we've all been seeing, they all play video games at this point that are in the same landscape and, you know, developed in the same software as a lot of the work that we're working in now in Unreal and such. So the sophistication of the audience is there to where if we're delivering less than they've been already viewing, it's cartoonish and it's no better than a YouTube video of someone doing it at home at some point. So I think we're all very aware of coming into the marketplace at a high level and staying there. And I think that's the hard part is educating the producers and producers that are like, oh, let's just go over. If we don't have time to do it in real life and we don't have time to put it on stage with a crew, let's just dip over here to XR Studios. And it's like, it's not as easy as that. There's as much ramp up time. It's just done in a different workspace. So to do something of quality still takes time, I think is what the message is there.
No, production is production. Any way you cut it and slice it and dice it. It always takes a lot of pre-production time and a lot of time to get things set up and people in the right places. I mean, I think the logistics in itself is a lot of there's just such a tremendous amount of work that goes into the logistics of production alone to make it all come together to work, to get people in the places they need to be. And, with what we've encountered today, we've had to find new ways and new dynamics to even be able to work together and bring the right pieces in the right places and the right equipment into the right places to be able to create a production. And there's just so much more, I think, that's sitting behind the scenes that people don't have exposure to, or maybe a customer doesn't truly understand how much work needs to go into being able to actually physically do the production. Christy actually brought up an interesting question here about how do you position ROI with those that are under budget restraints? And Cory, you kind of touched upon this a little bit earlier, so I'd like to kind of throw that one into your court.
I think this has been a debate for months, and working with different vendors and people who have equipment and people who want to get their own equipment and people that, could potentially, who have TV studios or green screen studios, and what does this look like as we dive into this being the medium of production or at least another new major avenue of content creation. And I think it's expensive. Like that's like the bottom line is like we need to sort of going back to what you just were talking about, like all of that film post-production that you'd expect is now added onto a pre-production cycle in cost. And then you're still talking about a medium to large size tour worth of gear in the room to make it, and people to make it happen. So there's been some great photos floating around on various things about like the room inside one of these studios with like 50 people, spread out over, 80,000 square feet or whatever it's going to be. It is taking all that in consideration, and then educating, going back to the other questions, like educating the artist and the clients and the vendors on what it takes to do this and do it well and do it properly. It is an expensive way. So there are other options that are less expensive if that's what the medium demands, and we can do it for certain ways, or bring in our goal is to bring the cost down ultimately to make this more affordable. But it is a bleeding edge technology. It does take so much to get it done and get it done right. But it is, again, shifted all to pre-production. So when you're amortizing those costs, how do you make that end product justify the cost of all that? And I wish I had a better answer. I've had these conversations 2 to 3 times for 6 months with different people of like, well, what is the output? How are we getting ticket sales, or how are we getting viewership or sponsorship? And those people are still figuring that out as well. There's a few paths people have tried, just like Tamlyn was talking about, everyone's tried a different audience technique, and some of them are great, some of them work,
Yep.
some of them are a little flat. But
Dan brought up a pretty good point there.
And like, it's the same thing with ticketing. Are we talking about stream sales, pay-per-view sales, live to drive-in single-use sales? Like, what is that output model, and does it justify this technology medium and cost? And then how do we reduce that? So that's part of every budget discussion we go into. I mean, it starts with a range of what do we think we're going to do. We were very good at knowing, okay, you want to do an arena tour, you're going to sell this many tickets, you want to spend this much on production. Here's what here are 2 options it could look like. That's a 30-minute conversation and a couple days of drawings and renderings. Like that's what we've been doing for 10 years. Like that's easy. But now it's like, well, we want to do a show, and we don't know we have an audience, so what are we going to do with that? And it's a much more nuanced, complicated conversation of what do you want to do? Who do you want to reach? How do you want them to see it? Is this something that's worth it to spend a bunch of money to make it look great? Or are we doing things repetitively? That way we can amortize those costs. Are we doing multiple shows a week? Are we doing multiple artists a week? Are we doing a concert series? Are we doing a drive-in series? Like, there is an infinite number of options now. So it does really take a village to kind of put together a budget and a structure. And then the investment on the ROI of, like, if it's talking about gear or technology, I think you have to sort of take the leap and think long term that there are uses of this technology. If COVID evaporated like tomorrow, we could still. This has been in progress, and it will continue to be in progress. It is still a tool that we should be able to use and keep working and progressing on for a variety of reasons, not just because there's no audience today. So I think taking that virtual production workflow from film and TV, moving it into a live space in a real-time environment is the goal. And it's as we all do it, and as more places come up, it's naturally going to drive us back into a pricing model that makes sense, based on the output model. And we're still in a bit of flux of figuring out how to sell tickets to things that people don't know exist. So I think there's a lot of flux going on.
Yeah, without a doubt. Berto, I want to throw a question to you, actually, from David.
Yeah.
He said, in a world where any visual elements are possible or is possible, are you folks receiving briefs with specific visioning, or is it seemingly a consistent state of tinkering? What are your kind of thoughts based around that?
Yeah, so I mean, at Albinal, we've been R&Ding a lot of this technology, or the possibilities with this technology, for the past probably 2 to 3 years. We've, me as the main R&D person at Albinal has, as you've seen a lot of the demos that I've done, I've been doing a lot of experimentations of what the possibilities of the technology can do for us. So, when we get a client that comes to us and says that we want to do this, we present them with what is possible with the technology, and we let them know that the idea is either possible or not. And before we even get a project, we make sure that they themselves agree that what they're trying to do is either possible or not, because once we get into the production phase of it, you're gonna have a lot of issues if they're expecting something that you promise them that is not possible. So that for us is, for me, with the experience that I've had, I'm able to kind of showcase that to the client and be like, you can do this and this, but you can't do that. So yeah, I don't know. And, a lot of the times, they'll send a lot of examples of what they want. And, the biggest thing that people want is occlusion, right? They want to be able to walk in front or behind some object, and automatically with XR, without having depth cameras or volumetric cameras, you can't really do that. So that's the biggest one today that everyone really wants. Yeah, hopefully that answers his question.
I think that kind of covers it. Actually, I want to throw one more at you, just Ted, really quickly. What's your favorite Unreal Marketplace asset? Because I think you'd probably be one of the best ones to answer that really quickly.
Oh, geez. There's a lot of great ones, but I think the level design asset is really, really nice. That way you can actually create things. It's kind of like a cloner system. It allows you to create instances of objects really, really quickly. And I'm also a big fan of the foliage tool to create landscapes and more realistic, outdoor environments. The sky, I can go on forever. Sky rendering that it has is, pretty amazing. Yes, Quixel's great. It has allowed everyone to be able to create realistic, physically based scenes, which is something that Epic has done greatly. Is Epic really wants people to use their tool, and they want to be the king of I see Epic as like the Google of 3D, right? They're gonna go out and buy every 3D company, and they're gonna own the pipeline and workflow. There's a lot.
I really hope you're not right. I hope that they can stay independent.
Yep. We'll see. That's the way I see it, as they keep buying out companies that are related to 3D technology. So we'll see where they go with that.
Yeah. Tamlyn, I wanted to ask, what have been some of the challenges that you've had in designing for extended reality or augmented reality? You're looking at, from set design, and Cory, I was going to ask you in a minute too, kind of already wrapping up on time, but I wanted to kind of get kind of your insights on creating visuals and being able to bring those scales and the different types of designs to life within extended reality, because the workflows are somewhat the same, but also very different in a lot of ways as well.
Correct. Currently on a project I'm on right now, it's a good example. It'll be a show called The Glory of Kings is the translation. It's a game. It's working with the Tencent gaming out of China. And what we're doing right now is we're creating this, we're putting in a full show essentially in an arena. We're filling up an arena with a stage that there will probably only be 12 people on. There will be an orchestra, but at the same time, they're wanting to bring in their gaming elements, which is it's a fantastic use of AR in a way that they'll be able to come in with dragons and oversized warriors, and they'll be able to bring in the
Can I go?
items. Yeah, exactly.
I'll ride a dragon.
When it comes out, it's under construction right now. But we're also in the process of carving like a 10-meter high Buddha for this. It's like at what point, then those are the conversations that we were having is through a translator are we going to carve this Buddha that's going to be 10 meters tall and really have it with LED lines and everything, or are we going to make this an AR element? And so it's where you're drawing a line, or if it's something that you have all of your cameras equipped to feed the AR or not. It's a budget problem sometimes on some shows where not all of the cameras are equipped, and they have 3 cameras instead of all the cameras. You've got 20 cameras or 10 cameras depending on your show. And so that they've only integrated 3 or 4 cameras. If they're limiting their budget, that's limiting what you can do and where you're going to shoot and where you're going to really be in your space. So it's a camera cost issue sometimes, but it's also a creative issue of in this instance, we're going to have 5 or 6 different musical act numbers, and each of those will then have an integration of different gaming elements that they'll bring into this space of an arena, which is going to be fantastic. We're still in the process of talking about how they're dealing with the audience. They haven't come around to that reality yet. As we're talking through, they're starting to see that they're going to have some gaps to fill. So as we're kind of pointing out those things, those are kind of more conversations that are evolving in the process that we're hot in the middle of right now, and after 6 o'clock every night. But what's exciting is where we're starting with what we are including and excluding. So when we're doing our drawings and developing in cinema, we're bringing them up, or in Unreal, and we're bringing them up to a certain point, and then we are continuing them on and then handing it over to their video game artists that are filling in the blank. And that's a very unique situation because they obviously have the assets that they're plugging and playing. Whether it's that I'm creating like plinths for them to land on, or if those plinths are going to just appear and then their dragons are going to land on those. So it's a matter of time and money, whether you're going to spend that in the computer or in the shop with guys loading it in on stage. So it's really, I don't know that there's a money offset, because there's still time in design and there's still time in creation that has to be had. It's just a matter of where you're moving those assets for your load in, for your what's available in the space that you've got, and the realities that you need to have for your client, I think. Obviously that's a fantasy client, that's fantastic, but that's not going to work for an Audi car show or something. It's going to be a little bit different construct. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Vincent and Berto, I know you guys are kind of pressed for time. We're kind of getting already up to the 45-minute mark, which, as I mentioned, goes by poof. Mm-hmm. And I feel kind of bad because I haven't been able to like fully engage. But Vincent, before you run off, kind of just touching on some of the things that Tamlyn was speaking about, what have been some of the challenges that you've had as well from bringing basically the physical and virtual designs together in a singular space?
So I think it takes a lot of consideration where your camera is going to move, and I think with that, actually one of the, I wouldn't call it a challenge, but I think with shall we say conventional content, you don't have to worry whether or not the cameraman is going to understand it and whether or not they're going to find the shots that really you have in your head. And if you're on very short production schedules and there isn't a lot of time for rehearsal, maybe you just won't get what you had imagined because that person doesn't really get it. And that's really, to hit on what Tamlyn said earlier, there really has to be an education step, not just towards the client, but also the wider production team. And, as far as what she said about this big Buddha, like we haven't been in that situation yet, but it's quite interesting, right? Because you have to think about what are we going to be interacting with? Is my actor going to lean up against something, or is it not really that kind of a thing? And I think that's exciting for XR. But to make XR, it's kind of physical in a way as well, because when you project it into an LED volume, the talent on stage can also only walk in so many places. Otherwise, your content just breaks. In that regard, it's very physical, and choreography is in some respects even more important. Where a few years ago you'd have black tracks, you could walk everywhere, and it would follow you around. Great, you could still do that, but right now you also have to treat that virtual as if it is physically there. And I think there's some learning there, both for creators, kind of working volumetrically and where we place everything, but also for the talent on stage. And
I'd like to add a little bit to Vincent there. I think the biggest thing here for content creators and content creation is we're actually working with merging physical and virtual spaces. So scale is a very, very big thing with this technology. So, I mean, a quick example, when I first started doing my first AR show before XR, I didn't think XR existed back then or knew what it was. But, I created graphics, and at the time when we were doing the AR, like nothing really, really worked. And I was like, well, why isn't it working? And, I quickly realized that my scale was off. And someone once told me, the biggest thing of XR is that, or augmented reality is you don't know if the object is really far away and really big and it looks like it's properly in your frame, or it's really, really close to your eyes and really small and it fills up the frame, right? So I think that right there alone is, the biggest thing of the creation of merging the physical and virtual world is scale. Everything is true scale. Everything has to be, where we spend half of our time calibrating scale on site. Once everything is working, we make sure that a meter is a meter, half a meter is half a meter, and so on. So yeah, just a little note there with that information.
So to answer Isabel's question, and after that I have to run because I need to run a show. Yes, the actors do have a view of the composite output. They need one, actually. As much as it helps tremendously that they're in the volume and they can interact and they can see everything and it speeds things up massively, they definitely need a screen where they can actually see and place themselves and feel, kind of immersed in that place.
Yeah, I think I was gonna say, I think one big value there is that you can now have visual cues for your performers as well. If you put a platform on the XR stage and you say, this is the platform, the void is the black piece of the content, don't step there or else you break the illusion, you're able to kind of guide your performer based on the visual aspects of the XR projection that's happening on screen.
Yep.
And that's a huge thing for artists to see. I mean, and to feel comfortable with. I mean, they've worked with video floors, they've worked with video screens. This is a natural environment, and it feels more natural than you would expect them to walk in and be like, "Oh, that's where that is. I get it now. I saw the renderings. This makes sense." But I would also say what you guys have been talking about. The hardest part with all that is the anticipation of needs. Like, we used to know. We create a physical space, we create the look, the lights, the content, and then they create the performance within it. But now the performance, just like really going back to theater, is so integral to the lighting, the coloring, the physical space, the physical amount of movement they need to do, the amount of dancers, the amount of interaction. It's creatively tied together. Not to mention all the 10 systems in the room that are talking to each other about physical space. But now you enter in the performance, whatever it is, to that is just another component. So if you want them to move 2 feet on a visual cue, they have to do that, and the lighting has to follow, and the content has to be balanced, and then the camera shot has to match. So all of a sudden we're going to cut from this camera to this camera, and it has to make sense, and we have to see the right background, and we have to be able to make that shot, or they have to be able to move 10 feet in their performance and get the correct shot. So it is the anticipation of needs is like cubed from what it used to be. And now the timeline has to be really thought of not only from a directorial standpoint, but getting them to understand the process and to get to understand the camera blocking and the timeline of building all that together. It can't just be made up on site, or we can't just shoot, like, let them come into the Grammys, do a performance, and we'll figure out how to shoot it later. It's like we need to start with the storyboards and start with what are we trying to do, and then build the content to match that. And then, I want to walk, like Berto, seclusion is a huge thing. Like, I want to be able to have this whole Buddha and be part of it, and then I want to walk around it. It's like, well, we're on site, we're looking at that. You can't walk around it. It's going to ruin the whole show. We need to stop down for 3 days, rebuild the Buddha, and come back. Like, that's the level of complexity that it's at, where you need to anticipate all the needs as much as you can. You'll never anticipate all of them, but as much as you can, more so than before. So that's all.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, we kind of hit the end of our time. I just wanted to thank you all for coming on the panel with me today. It went by just so incredibly quickly. I'm sure we could have kept this conversation going for hours and hours to come. There's been a lot of comments that have kind of piled in from the viewers. I'm sorry we did not get to all of your questions. We will definitely make sure to kind of rope back and get to some of those questions, or those unanswered questions that we weren't able to not able to answer during the show. And I just wanted to thank everybody for being so supportive, for coming and watching the show week after week. It's been great having you view the show and be so supportive. And to the panelists, guys, I thank you so much for being here with me today. It's been absolutely fantastic. I'm hoping we can kind of carry the conversations on offline and just kind of keep things rolling. So everybody, thanks for coming on the show. Next week, I'm going to be touching on some subjects that are pretty interesting as well, going into law inside of entertainment and talking about intellectual property rights, talking about patents and trade secrets and things like that with two unbelievable women from Nolan Heman LLP out of Los Angeles. So please be with me again next week. And to everybody, every single week, as I say, stay ahead of the curve. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.